teachers and nurses and doctors, laid broadband lines in rural communities. That would have made us more safe. All the lives, who knows what they might have done. So we should have never gone into that war. And I will end that war when I'm President of the United States, and I'll bring our troops home in 2009. But I don't want to just end the war. I want to end the mindset that got us in the war. I want to end the politics of fear that tries to use a tragedy to scare up votes instead of bring us together in a common purpose. You know, early in this campaign, I got in an argument with Senator Clinton. I said I would meet not just with our friends, but with our enemies. Not just with leaders we liked, but leaders we didn't. And all the talking heads in Washington said, oh, that's a gaffe. That's so irresponsible. That's so naive. You can't do that. And I said, watch me. Because I remember what John F. Kennedy said. He said, we should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate. Strong countries and strong presidents talk to their adversaries and tell them where America stands and try to resolve our differences without resort to war. And when we do that, I am looking forward to going before the world community and saying, America's back. We are ready to lead. And we will lead. We will lead in defeating those terrorist networks. We will lead in locking down loose nuclear weapons and reinvigorating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and setting a goal, a standard where we can eliminate the use of nuclear weapons. But we will also lead on climate change. We will also lead by building schools around the world that teach math and science instead of hatred of Americans. We will also lead by helping poor countries build public health infrastructure to deal with HIV/AIDS and malaria and other devastating diseases. We will lead by bringing an end to the genocide in Darfur, because we're not a nation that turns a blind eye to slaughter. And we will lead by closing Guantanamo and restoring habeas corpus, because we're not a nation that locks people up without charging them. If you are ready for change. If you are ready for change. But understand, change doesn't come easy. The status quo resists change. Not just Republicans. Democrats get comfortable. They start kind of feeling like, oh, okay, well, this is how things work. And so when we started this campaign, nobody gave us much of a chance. They said, well, he'll never be able to raise the money. They didn't realize there's this thing called the internet. And we have built a grassroots fundraising network that people have never seen before. We got 170,000 new donors just this month. $25, $5, $10. Broke all the records because of you. So then they said, well, you know what? He's never going to get any of the institutional support and all the endorsements. That's what you need to run a presidential campaign. But they didn't understand that we are building from the grassroots. We have a different model. We got precinct captains. We got folks who are energized and invigorated. And we have built the best political organization in this campaign, in this country right now, from the bottom up. And so they said, well, all right, maybe you've built the organization, maybe you've raised the money, And I know Obama talks pretty good, and you like his policy positions, but it would be a roll of the dice to elect him because he has not been in Washington long enough. And we need to season and stew him a little bit more and boil all the hope out of him, and maybe then he will be ready to be president. But you know what, the American people, I think they're rejecting that argument because they realize the biggest gamble would be to have the same old folks doing the same old things over and over again and somehow expecting a different result. That's a risk we can't take. That's a gamble we can't afford. The stakes are too high. We need to turn the page and write a new chapter in American history. And now, as we, have started winnowing down the field, we're hearing all the usual stuff. There's the negative attacks and the emails that say I don't, pledge allegiance to the flag, even though I've been doing it since I was 3 and lead the Senate when I preside in the Pledge of Allegiance. And, there are folks who are arguing, well, he, is a follower of Ronald Reagan. Despite this week them saying, well, he's too liberal because he's got a liberal voting record. He's a little too black. Well, maybe he's not black enough. There are all sorts of reasons being offered by purveyors of the status quo as to why we can't bring about change. But ultimately, it all comes down to you. It comes down to whether or not you believe it. Let me just describe, after Iowa, I think there were a lot of people who were just giddy. We had won a great victory, and all these nice write-ups, and I was on the cover of Newsweek, pretty picture, and everybody was just excited. And then we lost in New Hampshire, and suddenly people were like, oh, I guess this isn't as easy as we thought. See, people thought that, you win one election and suddenly the status quo gives in and, elect Barack and, immediately we'll have racial reconciliation and poverty will be over and, nobody will argue anymore and your teenage children will listen to you and and so it was useful for us to recognize that this isn't easy. I've been talking about change since the beginning of this campaign. I talked about change when we were up. I talked about it when we were down. And now this change thing must be really catching on, because I've noticed everybody's talking about change. Mitt Romney's got change on his signs. And, George Bush, for all I know, he's for change. But see, we're not interested in change as a slogan. We want change that we can believe in, and that has to be earned. That has to be earned. That requires hard work. It requires that we come together, that we overcome real differences, that we're willing to disagree without being disagreeable. That we're willing to listen to each other. That we're willing to try new things that get us out of our comfort zone. And it requires hope.